Yo, what's going on, Tiny Clown? It's your boy King Tiny X here, back with another video, and this is going to be the finale of the Juggernaut series. I would like to thank Neptune for helping me with the progression of this series and being able to help build the backbone of the series. They have their own thing that they're working on as well. If you are interested, I would say to DM them on Discord in order to ask them about the Data Live and DXD crossover what if, basically combining two universes. Also, I will leave the link to my Discord in the description below as well. Anyways, it's time to roll that intro.
何としてでも勝つ。何としてでも生きる。
Now, when it came on to Rias's group, they would have headed off to the underworld for the Young Devils gathering. In terms of Issei though, he would have also been busy in the underworld. Although when it came on to him, he would have been busy recording a new episode for his latest TV show, which was getting rather popular. Issei would be finding great success with this show, especially with the influence of Serafal being involved with the show as well. Issei would continue to enjoy boxing, and he would even be able to spar with a couple of the actors on the show. This helped to improve his reflexes because of the fact that they would usually end up having their own sort of special moves. Although none were as skilled as him in boxing, thanks to their movesense, they would basically force Issei to constantly adjust most of the time, even if they weren't necessarily going to be deadly attacks. Issei would always have it in his mind to take any sort of attack, regardless if it's just sparring or life-threatening. Basically, always take it seriously. That's basically what would be going through Issei's mind at all times when it came on to how he fought. Issei would get interrupted by Serafal though one day because of the fact that she would be requesting for the boy to actually do something for her. Once he was done recording his episode for the day, that is, she would request that he actually attend the ceremony for Young Devils. The reasoning being that she would see this as a good opportunity for Issei to get a great amount of experience. He wouldn't be required to necessarily participate in any of the events though. Issei would shrug and decide to leave not too long after attending the party for the Young Devils. There Issei would actually see Rias's peerage. Not just Rias's peerage, but also Sona's as well. There were other unfamiliar devils there too. Issei would wave to a couple of them and Sona would just blush though, turning away from Issei. Issei would just chuckle knowing the whole situation regarding them. Issei's attention would fall onto Konoko though throughout this time at the party, because of the fact that she would have ended up running out of said party for some reason. This was odd in Issei's book. Konoko was never like this. His curiosity would be piqued here, so he would end up following her to the forest. There Issei would actually meet Konoko's older sister, Kuroka. The first thing he noticed about Kuroka though was, how attractive she was. Issei would find out that Kuroka wanted Konoko back, but he wasn't really all that willing to let that happen. Issei really did like this girl after all, thanks to the fact that she was strong and she was actually willing to spar with him during his time back in Rias's peerage. Kuroka would laugh when realizing that Issei wasn't going to let her take back Konoko without a fight though. She would imagine that this was going to be an easy fight. Baiko would be by her side and they would begin to approach Issei. He would swing his staff at Issei, thinking that this would be enough to actually take him down, but Issei would simply block the attack by lifting up his arm, having the staff only hit his forearm instead. Issei would throw an uppercut at Baiko. Baiko would dodge just in time though, but the wind pressure from the attack would actually knock him off his feet. This surprised and unnerved him, due to the fact that Issei had yet to seemingly use his sacred gear against him. He had yet to even show any semblance of activating the boosted gear. This made him question where he was getting this sort of power from, because he doubted that this could just be his raw strength, just some sort of. He just could not necessarily explain it. He doubted that this could just be his relaxed sort of strength, him just being in his base form or something. There had to be something up with this form of his. Issei's movements would only continue to speed up from there though. Even when Baiko made duplicates of himself that showed little effect on Issei. Eventually, Issei managed to grab onto the real Baiko and he would actually throw him at Kuroka. Kuroka would duck, but he would be forced to take on Issei alone. Well, she would be forced to take on Issei alone afterwards. Kuroka would be barraged by attacks from Issei from there on. She was only able to narrowly dodge most of these attacks. The ones that did connect though, they felt like a freight train hit her. Issei would knock her out and bring her, alongside with Baiko, back to the higher ups of the underworld. There, Issei would make one request when it came onto Kuroka, this being to claim her as one of his own. Kuroka would end up having most of her powers sealed away, with Issei being left in charge of keeping her at bay from there on. Issei would go on to watch Rias's rating game against Sona Citri's peerage, but he would honestly just get bored halfway through. He would just end up leaving. He wouldn't really care about the results. He would be more concerned about going back to just simply shadow boxing. Issei would find out about the apparent engagement between Asya and Diodora Astaroth from Kiba. According to Kiba, Rias's and Diodora's teams were supposed to have a rating game, but all of a sudden the Chaos Brigade interfered with it. Diodora's involvement with the Chaos Brigade was also revealed at that moment. Kiba was forced to witness seeing Asya, essentially the love of his life, get kidnapped by this jerk, and afterwards this guy trying to force her into getting married to him. The Grimoire peerage were only barely able to actually defeat him, thanks to Kiba's enraged awakening of his sacred gear. At that moment, he had ended up unlocking Glory Drag Trooper. A couple of soldiers would be formed aiding Kiba in his fight against Diodora. Kiba would also have it to where his strength and speed seemed to multiply at that moment, as he was incredibly desperate to save Asya. His desperation was what allowed him to even pierce through the barriers made by Astaroth. Unfortunately, in the end, it was all for naught though, because they were unable to compete against Astaroth when he revealed that he had one of Ophus's snakes on standby. He would simply have the snakes bite his neck, and this would cause his power to be amplified to such an extent that it would surpass Rias's own. The situation will only get worse from there because of the fact that Shalba Beelzebub would also make his presence known, confiscating Asya from Diodora. He would send the girl to the dimensional gap. Rias's group would be shocked seeing this. Kiba would begin to cry though. He would just begin to break down, feeling as if he had simply just lost hope at that moment, and ever seeing Asya again. And she was sent to a whole nother dimension, for crying out loud. Sir Zex would make a quick call to Seraphol though. He was hoping that maybe she could have Issei come over and help with this sort of situation because of the fact that he currently had his hands tied with somebody else. Somebody more concerned, you could say. Seraphol would hear about the situation and she would immediately send out Issei to help Rias's team. Issei was promised to hang out with Zenobia and Akano after the mission was completed. Issei would be quick to make his way to the area and he would see his target, Beelzebub. Beelzebub would attempt to stop Issei, but nothing would seem to work against Issei for some reason. It was as if he had some sort of force field covering him at all times. Every time Beelzebub tried to make an attack, it just reflected off. Any attacks that did actually manage to pierce, Issei simply just healed from them, almost immediately. In the end, Issei would actually defeat Shalba Beelzebub, but he wouldn't be able to recover Asya though. He would tell everyone the bad news. Kiba would be somber hearing this. He would thank Issei for at least managing to take down the big bad here. At least they were able to take down these evildoers. Well, the guys who ended up wronging Asya, so at least she could be in peace for once in her life. Issei would genuinely be feeling bad for Kiba, but he understood as well that there was really nothing he could do in this situation. Issei would relieve his stress by going on 2 dates though after the mission was completed. The 2 dates being of course the ones that were promised to him by Seraphol. The first would be with Zenobia. They would end up just talking, going to a fair, and they would also end up talking about their histories. Zenobia would find out about how Issei just found this random gem one day and all of a sudden that's where all of his powers seemingly came from, on top of being the Red Dragon Emperor. And when it came on to Zenobia, she would talk more about her history with the church. Although she was genuinely intrigued about how Issei could just become so powerful at such a young age from seemingly just 1 ruby. I mean, she wanted to know if that could actually be passed on like some sort of gene mutation. His second date would be with Akano. Although with both dates he would notice a bit of bitterness. There would be a bit of bitterness in Zenobia, and there was even more with Akano, considering the fact that she was with Asya for longer. This bitterness, of course, would be from Asya's death. Issei would understand what they were going through, well, to an extent, but also realized that really there was nothing he could really ever do in these sort of situations. Issei would meet up with Odin, Rosweiss, and Barakiel. I probably butchered his name again, didn't I? While on his date with Akano. Tension would fill the area though as soon as Akano spotted her father. This would even unnerve Issei though, because of the sudden shift of how her personality was. Akano seemed to be a seductive but sort of bouncy girl as well, up until she saw the fallen angel leader, which confused Issei. He was wondering what sort of relationship she had with the man. This was more than Issei had bargained for. When the date was over, Issei would head home and continue to ponder about the situation regarding Akano. He would head to the underworld and even ask Seraphal about it, but Seraphal wouldn't really give him much of an answer. Instead, she would shrug, saying that she wasn't really all that aware of the situation. Well, seemingly anyways. Issei would attend the Alliance meeting with Seraphal though as her bodyguard. The Alliance meeting would be interrupted though by Loki and his army. Loki's army would have been composed of several wolves with Fenrir basically being the head of the army. Loki's goal here was to kill Odin and essentially create Ragnarok, but Issei would immediately summon his Juggernaut armor before racing towards the armies Loki had command over. Loki would grow frustrated seeing Issei simply pushing so many of Fenrir's children back without seemingly slowing down at all. Issei would begin to use his boosted gear as well later on in the fight, taking down his fair share of giant wolves. Eventually, Issei would even tap into his scale mill armor, covering his Juggernaut armor, and he would go on to approach Loki. Loki would begin to cower before Issei, and he had good reason to as well, because at that moment Issei would knock out the trickster in one hit. Issei would remove his armor afterwards. He would deactivate from his scale mill armor his Juggernaut armor, and when it came on to boosted gear, that would also end up being deactivated as well. In the end, Issei would walk back over to Seraphal. They would act as if nothing happened and just go watch a romance anime together. Issei would be tearing up after seeing one of the characters end up getting their heart broken though, while Seraphal would just be looking at him like, "You were one big softie, you know that, right?" Issei would end up going on a school trip to Kyoto a couple months later. This would actually be a breath of fresh air for once though, due to the fact that Issei wasn't really going to be worrying about devils, angels, none of that. Until he ended up getting attacked by several yokai during his visit. He would be confused, but he wasn't going to pass up the fight. They would be able to explain the situation though after Issei managed to defeat them. It was relatively one-sided, to be honest. Issei would end up hearing about the fact that, well, the yokai leader, Yasaka, was apparently kidnapped by some people. They thought that Issei was one of these people, one of the culprits behind their leader's kidnapping. But Issei would confirm that, well, of course, he had absolutely no involvement. It's just that he has a magical presence. Issei would end up meeting the real culprits though, which would turn out to actually be the hero faction. Issei would be attacked by the hero faction, forcing the Red Dragon Emperor to fight. Issei would overwhelm the entire hero faction though. Sao would be the last remaining member afterwards. After seeing Issei take down basically all the rest of the hero faction, Sao would try to keep his composure. He would try to fend off against Issei, even managing to actually injure the boy a couple of times. But there was one issue. Issei would simply heal from his injuries just a couple of seconds after, which was irritating to Cao Cao for obvious reasons. Issei would grab onto Cao Cao's face before slamming his head into the ground. He would demand to know where Yasaka was. Cao Cao would realize the position he was in at that moment and tell Issei. Issei would drag the leader of the hero faction to the location. Once he was able to confirm that the leader was not lying to him, he would simply throw him away, having no more use for the man. He would realize that this was a real Yasaka, and, well, he would of course return it back to the yokai faction. Of course, he would end up getting a reward from Yasaka. Whatever reward, you guys can figure it out. You guys can probably tell, like, from how the other parts have been. Afterwards, Issei would continue to spend the rest of his time in Kyoto. He would simply be exploring the place and even bring back a couple of souvenirs. By the time Issei would be done with his trip, he would go check on his manager Serafal. He would find it by the toilet though, which was odd to Issei, only to see that she was throwing up. Issei's eyes would widen. He would immediately know what this meant. He would head right back out in order to buy some milk. Yeah, that's basically the end of this What If. Yeah, this has gotta be like one of the weirdest endings ever, but yeah. Anyways, it's your boy King Time X signing out. You guys already know the deal. If you like the video, like it. If you like this video, you may want to check out a couple of more videos just in case. And oh yeah, if you've been watching my content for a little bit, why not maybe hit the subscribe button? It's free. And yeah, maybe share the videos too to help with the algorithm. Cause yeah. It's your boy King Time X out. Peace.